Hello everybody and welcome back to Time+Tide in Melbourne, Australia, where today we have a very big topic about a very big watch, and that's the Big Pilot. In 2021, we have never seen a year as big as this for this model. Now, you might be wondering about something else that's big, and that is the question, are you a subscriber to Time+Tide? Have you hit that bell notification? That's not it, that's not it. Of course, the big elephant in the room, aside from this very big topic, is my very big watch. Now, this is a remarkable watch, and I've had to do all kinds of tricks to keep it on my wrist. This is a pilot watch, a big pilot watch from 1940 from the German Air Force. It is a reference 431 IWC original pilot watch on a preposterously large strap that I have just tried to engineer onto my wrist. Now, why is this here? It's because that's where our story starts in just a few minutes. For now, I'd like to set the scene. This is the biggest year for the Big Pilot ever, and that is because we see the watch move from a historical tool watch to a cultural icon, which is what happened when it was relaunched in 2002, to now in 2021, where it becomes a truly civilian watch with civilian intentions in mind. What does that mean? We see new sizes, we see new colors, we see new additions and deductions from the watch, some expected and some not. We see new straps and new quick change tricks. There are so many things that are fresh about this watch in 2021. If we start with the original pilot watch in 1940, this was strictly for pilot use. Every single aspect of this watch was optimized for pilot use. We see in 2002, a watch that is released that has a very strong aesthetic statement, but that still maintains many of those tool watch attributes. And now we see a watch in 2021 that is meeting the market in terms of what watch buyers are seeking in convenience, in being on trend for size, and also in flair, like bringing more contemporary flair to the wrist. So that's how I'd characterize the journey overall. And the best way to really demonstrate this is to put this big boy aside, out of frame if I can, Jen. That's probably still in frame, but I really want to focus here on the differences between the 2002 Big Pilot, 46 millimeters, and the 2021 Big Pilot, 43 millimeters. Now, the most obvious difference, aside from the size, if I can prop them up next to each other, is that we have no date and no power reserve on the 2021 version. And I can also tell you, from my view, we have a clear view through the Caseback on the new Big Pilot 43. Okay, so let's get into it. We're looking at the differences between the 2002 46 millimeter Big Pilot versus the 2021 43 millimeter Big Pilot. And I'm going to start with putting them side by side, face to face, and saying the most obvious differences, of course, the size. Now, this is a 3 millimeter reduction. And interestingly, when they're side by side, it actually is harder to pick than you might think. From the back, they do look, I have to admit, they do look quite different. But before, I was looking at them side by side thinking, that 3 millimeters, is it really that much of a difference? It certainly is on wrist as we begin to get into the specifications. Now, obviously, looking at them face on, you will note that the 43 millimeter Big Pilot has no date and no power reserve, which cleans up that dial and again, goes for what they're trying to do here, which is bring the Big Pilot to a more contemporary, almost more conservative, less tooly type of aesthetic. Now, those specifications we talked about, lug to lug, the 46 millimeter Big Pilot from 2002, right up until now, is 56 millimeters lug to lug. How does that wear? I have a 7-inch wrist and I have a Big Pilot, and there is no denying it. This watch takes significant wrist real estate. And that crown, if you wear it on your left like I do, it's gonna remind you it's there from time to time. 43 millimeters, how does the 52 millimeter lug to lug go on this watch? I'll wear it the right way. it is a very different experience. While the crown is still very prominent, the crown size is also commensurate smaller. So it's not the same size crown as the 46. And really it's a more reasonable wear on the wrist in terms of how it wraps at 52 millimeters. Still, for me at 7 inches, it's almost covering my entire wrist. So as you can see, it takes less wrist real estate, and that crown is going to be interposing on me a lot less, given that it doesn't jut out quite as far towards the back of the actual hand. The other big difference in terms of key specs is the difference in height or thickness. The original Big Pilot from 2002 is 15.6 millimeters thick, and the new Big Pilot shaves off a full 2 millimeters to be 13.6 millimeters thick. So again, in every possible way, this watch is not as big, but also, I would say, substantially more comfortable for the wearer. Continuing on with the case, when I was holding them up to you before, I was seeing the big shift here again towards a more civilian iteration of a tool watch, and that is an open caseback. Now, the closed caseback of the 2002 46 millimeter Big Pilot and beyond was also to preserve the soft iron inner cage. Now, the 43 millimeter Big Pilot is not doing any such thing. We have a sapphire crystal caseback, and we can clearly see the movement, the caliber 82000 versus the caliber 52000 on the 46 millimeter Big Pilot. New caliber means new power reserve. Now, one of the big draw cards of the 46 millimeter Big Pilot is that whopping 7-day power reserve that's referred to right there. And you know, on my Liberty Prince model, I'm always curious to see how hard I've been working with the watch on the wrist to see if I've quite got us up to that 7 days. Not going to have that option with the 43 millimeters because you pay a price for all of this comfort and convenience. This watch has a 60-hour power reserve. Another big change is the water resistance, and that's where this one gets a knockback. This is where we get a blowback for the new model. This is good to 10 bar of water resistance, which is 100 meters, versus a 6 bar, 60 meter water resistance on the original. But if you think about it, Pilot tool watch, water, you don't want to be resisting any water in this thing. Like if you're wearing a Pilot watch in 1940 in the water, your mission is over. I mentioned earlier that the new model is more fit for civilian life, and that refers to more than just the aesthetics on the wrist and looking at it. It's also how you interface with this watch and the options you have for the way you wear it. The original 46 millimeter Big Pilot gave you a calfskin strap, and that was it. That was your choice. The new models, the 43 millimeter 2021 models, have a quick change strap system, and for the first time ever, the option, and I bet you've been waiting for me to pick this thing up, the option to wear a Big Pilot on a bracelet. Just as the calfskin strap has a quick change system, so does this steel bracelet. And look, admittedly, I'm not the most dexterous member of this team, and I have just been challenged by Nick Kenyon to do this live on air, so we're going to do this. The quick change strap system is really simple. On the calfskin, there is a little gunmetal plate here that you press in, and it should be relatively simple to click it off like that, and then putting it back on is a bit of a snap too. Clicked back on, just pushed back onto the spring bar, which is fixed. As for the metal bracelet, it's a little bit trickier. There's a little steel clip just over the spring bar, which you press, and then it actually basically just pops out. You see that it lifts at the top and then clicks back in really simply. So if I can do that as not the most dexterous member of this team, then you can certainly do it too. I'm going to have to clean these watches now, but certainly that is the spirit of the new 43 millimeter Big Pilot. It is convenience, it is aesthetics, and it is one last big change. You might look at this blue dial model on bracelet and think that's a Liberty Prince model because it has a blue starburst dial, sunray dial, however you want to describe it. It's not an LPP model. The color blue has been unleashed by IWC in 2021 to be free to play with all models without necessarily being part of that LPP collection. So again, blue is almost certainly the most contemporary and popular dial color in the current day, and IWC are now letting it play wherever it wants to land, and it's landed this year on the Big Pilot. In terms of the shade of blue, I asked IWC, is this subtly different to the Le Petit Prince blue? And the answer, as far as we can tell so far, is no. It is a match for match blue sunray dial that will be indistinguishable from a LPP dial. So there you have it. The Big Pilot from 1940, a tool watch in every sense of the word, and I still don't even know how to put it on properly, so I'm clearly not going to make the Air Force. It didn't want to turn up at your 21st birthday party. It was there for pilots alone. We flash forward to 2002, a reissue that was quite faithful to its tool watch origins with a soft iron inner cage, a 7-day power reserve. It's still a tool watch, which made it so cool. And now in 2021, we have the 43mm Big Pilot, which is less big. It's 43mm, a more comfortable wear on the wrist. It has 100 meters water resistance, and it has, best of all, aside from that sexy exhibition caseback, this very easy to operate quick change strap system, which is in typical IWC fashion, over-engineered to the nines and extremely well executed, very easy to use. So there, what a flight. From the biggest pilot in 1940 to the Big Pilot in 2002 to the less big and far more convenient and showy Big Pilot in 2021. What do you think? Can IWC make one of their most iconic models fly at a different altitude? I look forward to your comments. I'll be down there answering your questions. Thanks so much for watching.